As I get prepared to write a full review for Modern Warfare Zombies as a whole, I wanted to do a video specifically talking about why I don't really like open world zombies in Call of Duty all that much, at least at this current point. Now don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. There's definitely a lot in it that I do enjoy. I wouldn't play it at all if I completely hated it, but I do think it lacks a lot of what you can get out of other experiences within zombies, mainly of course within round-based zombies. And also a lot of the potential it has, I don't think has been met yet, and I don't think it ever really will be met. So I have a couple specific points I want to get into revolving around why I don't really enjoy open world zombies too much. And let me be clear, this is specifically about Call of Duty Zombies. I love open world zombies games. I love Dying Light. I love Dying Light 2. You could even consider Minecraft an open world zombies game if you really wanted to. There's plenty of other open world zombies games that I love. But specifically for Call of Duty Zombies, what we've gotten so far with, of course, Outbreak and Modern Warfare Zombies, I just don't think it's entirely for me. So as I do with any negative video, I always think it's fair to also look at the other side and just talk about some of the stuff I genuinely do enjoy about open world zombies, because there are some things that are positive about it and they deserve to be discussed. First of all, open world zombies is probably the only place where we're ever going to get to see an experience in zombies where we get over 20 players in a game at a single time. That's not going to happen with round-based zombies, so that in and of itself is pretty cool. Now, to be fair, I haven't had that many games where like that many players were in one area at the same time. Usually it's a max of like 8 or 9, maybe. Having the whole lobby in the same area is very unlikely, but there has been many games I've seen personally from like people on YouTube just like streaming it, where they got a full lobby to fight like the Red Worm, for example. Stuff like that is really cool, and like I said, you're not going to get that with round-based zombies. Also, there's a lot of elements from Warzone and even multiplayer that they could easily repurpose into this mode, and it would actually work and make sense. And a lot of that has to do with like the looting, the rarity system, the armor, like everything just fits a lot better in this. And I think it doesn't really fit nearly as well in round-based. I actually think round-based is where a lot of these things shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a mini-map in round-based. We shouldn't have all these different systems in round-based, but they work really well in an open world zombies mode. They don't feel out of place. They don't feel forced. They actually kind of flow well with it. And lastly, there are a lot of things to do, although I don't love all of the things to do in Outbreak and MWZ, but there's definitely a lot of options of how to play. There's a lot of different objectives. There's not, you know, a ton necessarily, but there's enough to the point where, especially for the first month of playing the game, there was a lot to explore and a lot to do. But now let's just get into the negatives. So the first point I have here is just the fact that we are not getting any original locations with open world zombies, and we probably never will, with some exceptions. The only original location we've ever gotten in an open world Call of Duty Zombies mode thus far was, of course, within Outbreak's first Easter egg with the bunker. That was the only actual original location we've gotten so far. Correct me if I'm wrong there. All of the locations we've had on these different, experiences so far were either from multiplayer or of course in Warzone. And of course, if you don't play those modes, then yes, it is going to feel new to you. And there's a lot of players out there who are like that. They don't play Warzone, so of course, when they're playing Modern Warfare Zombies, the Urzikstan map does feel new to them. But at the end of the day, even if it does feel new to them, it still isn't going to have that full zombies flavor and that full zombies feel, because it was not originally made for it. And it doesn't even really have enough changes to it to really make it feel zombified. There's some things here or there. Obviously the skybox is a bit different. Then of course you have stuff like spores with the, infested strongholds. And then when you get into the Dark Ether, obviously that is significantly changed, but still the location itself, the layout, it was not originally made for zombies. So they didn't really keep in mind how zombies would play within these different play spaces. And just not even talking about gameplay, but even just story-wise and the atmosphere, there's a lot less intrigue to the locations you're discovering. When I'm going around on really any open world zombies experience in Call of Duty, I don't really feel that same feelings I get playing round-based maps where I'm like, oh, this is a really cool, location. This building's really cool. There's so much to explore here. There's really nothing to explore here. You find a building on Urzikstan in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. I don't really think much of it because I know it's just a building that's also in Warzone. There's no specific thing about it that makes it unique or interesting. It's just, oh, it's another location that we've already seen within Warzone, and it's not made for zombies. It's not really important to zombies. You don't have those little details, those little things that kind of make you go, oh, that's really cool, and it really adds to some deeper lore connections that the map has. You don't really get that with the open world zombies maps, so to me, that's a big problem. And yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where they're going to make original locations for open world zombies, because it's just too much. That would be way too much work for the developers. It's even pretty hard for them to get out 5 round-based maps. To get a full big original map for zombies, that would be nearly impossible. Now, could it happen? Sure, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I just think it's extremely unlikely. Chances are, whenever we see open world zombies again, they're going to utilize the Warzone map, or maybe some, ground war map, or perhaps even the campaign open world map, because apparently campaign is supposed to be open world next year. At least it's what the current rumors are. So perhaps they'll use that map. I have no idea, but chances are it's not going to be originally made for zombies. Now, the next point I have mostly pertains to Modern Warfare Zombies more than it pertains to Outbreak, and this is just simply that there's too much time spent on this map, or in this game in general, just running around because, of course, it is a large open map. It's less of a problem on Outbreak because Outbreak's regions are a bit smaller and there's a lot more transportation methods to get around the map faster. I feel like any Outbreak map, I can probably get to the other side within less than a minute, most likely. But on Urzikstan, oh, no. It takes maybe like 4 to 5 minutes to get across the map. Now, of course, you can use vehicles, you can use the rift tears. There's different ways of getting around the map. But the problem is that most of these ways of getting around the map are not very reliable. Vehicles get destroyed really quickly. They also run out of gas, which to me just doesn't make any sense. This is a mode where you're playing open world zombies. Why would the vehicles break down that easily, and why would they run out of gas? It doesn't make any sense to me. They should allow us to get around the map faster and easier so we can spend more time actually doing the things we came into the game to do. And then, of course, you have the rift tears, but there's not like a million rift tears around the map. There's only some. So you have to go run to those in the first place and then get to your next location after, going into the sky and then, parachuting all the way there. So yeah, you could get to one, but inevitably it's just going to take a lot of time out of the game. And if the game was unlimited time, maybe that wouldn't be as big of a deal, but you only have 45 minutes in the match. So you're spending so much time wasted just running around the map, and to me that kind of takes away a lot of the fun that it could have if I was spending more time actually doing the stuff I'm there to do, like contracts, different side Easter eggs, different missions, whatever it may be. And they do a good job of keeping the zombies constantly spawning in, so if you are just running across the map, you're gonna come across a lot of action on the way there. It's not like you're just never gonna come across a zombie while you're running. But the thing is that's not what I came into the match for. If I came into the match to do, let's say, 5 different tasks, right? I want to go do those 5 tasks uninterrupted. I want to go from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E without any significant interruptions. If there is some interruptions, if it takes away maybe a minute or two, that's fine. But if I start feeling like a lot of time is being taken away because it's just a lot of running from point A to point B, that is going to take away the enjoyment of it. And inevitably, open world zombies is going to be like that. Now, could they change it? Yes, they could make it so vehicles don't require fuel, so they don't get destroyed so quickly, or so there's a lot more transportation methods. They can definitely make this work better. They just have yet to do that, in my opinion. So hopefully they can make changes in the future modes, future iterations of open world zombies, but currently it just doesn't, I don't get a lot out of it when I'm just half the game running around the map. And you don't really get that in round-based zombies because the maps are very dense. They're very, contained in a specific location. Getting one point of the map to the other, it takes a pretty short amount of time, and everything you need to do on the map is all within the same region. It's all within the same area. You're not traveling large distances just to get around, unless we're talking about a map like Transit, of course, but there's exceptions to every rule, obviously. Now, the next point I have here is kind of hard to explain, so bear with me here, but I do believe that there is a lot of artificial difficulty thrown into Modern Warfare Zombies because of how open world zombies is set up. This doesn't really apply nearly as much to Outbreak because I felt like Outbreak was extremely easy, and I do think Modern Warfare Zombies is pretty easy too for the most part. It's one of the easier zombies modes out there, but there is some artificial difficulty related things that are thrown into the match to make it a bit harder, which I do appreciate it being a bit harder than, obviously something like Outbreak. But at the same time, the way they decided to make it more difficult, I don't think was the right way to do it. And this is, of course, with super sprinters and, of course, a lot of weapons just being extremely weak in the tier 3 and dark ether areas unless you have them fully pack-a-punched in, the highest tier possible. Now, if we go back to round-based zombies, one of the main ways of making round-based zombies more difficult has always been the map layout. And this might be kind of, obvious to a lot of people, but the maps have always been designed in a way where the challenge is getting stuck in a corner. That has always been what makes zombies difficult. You go back to World at War, if you have open space, it's going to be easy. Look at Shinonuma. Shinonuma is one of the only maps in World at War to give you a lot of open space. Of course, there was swamps thrown in there so the water would slow you down, but you were still having a lot more open space than you were used to having, which is why Shinonuma ended up being one of the easiest zombies maps of all time, and it was definitely the easiest in World at War because you had all of this open space just to train around. You're not going to get caught by zombies because because the only way you were ever going to go down is if you get cornered. And that goes for most other zombies maps that come out later on. That was always the challenge, was if you're, trying to get to Juggernog, for example, on Deriz, and you get cornered because, what are you going to do? You're stuck in a corner. How are you supposed to get out of there? The zombies work in a way where you can't push them out of the way. You have to try to get around them, make a gap in between them. But if you get stuck in that gap, well, then you're dead. Unless you can kill them before they get to you, of course, and then you can get out of that gap, a bit faster. But that's just how it always has been. Then you go to, the later zombies games within like Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, they kept adding a lot more wonder weapons and specialist abilities and a bunch of other things that just overall help you even if you don't have a great weapon. So let's say you have like, your specialist ability in Black Ops 3. You can get out of a corner because that specialist ability is ready. Specialist abilities in Black Ops 4 especially can get you out of corners quite frequently. So there's a lot more things to help you in those situations. So even if a map was very tight, very, tight corridors, you were still able to survive just because, if you charged up those abilities and kept them saved, you can save yourself. And then even going into like Cold War and stuff, I think, Cold War was very easy because weapons just demolished zombies very, very easily. And just the way you were able to kind of juke out zombies, they made it so it was a lot easier to get around zombies. You were less likely to get trapped in a corner in Cold War. But once you get to Modern Warfare Zombies, I think they realized that we have these really open maps. If we don't find a way to make the game a lot harder, they're never going to go down. Because why would anyone go down with the mechanics of World at War with a map like Urzikstan? You're never going to die. You can just train them endlessly, right? So what they do is they have to find a way to make it more difficult. And their main solution was, of course, the super spinners. We've seen super spinners before. They've been in prior zombies experiences, but in this game, they really felt like that was their main way of making it harder. And yes, that is definitely the most challenging thing in Modern Warfare Zombies is the super spinners. I feel like anytime I've ever gone down in the tier 3 zones or in the dark ether was always due to a super spinner. Also the dogs are incredibly fast in this game, so they kind of are, similar with the super spinners, but those are always the ones that cause my downs because I physically can't get away fast enough in order for me to stay alive. In prior zombies experiences, if you're damaged, just get out of the way. But of course, like I was saying before, most of the maps were built in a way to where you're not going to easily be able to get out of the way because you could be cornered. You need to find a way to get out of there without, getting hit again. So that's where the challenge comes into play. But if you have this open space, that's not going to normally be a challenge. So again, they had to find different artificial difficulty to make it harder. The problem is that stuff like super spinners to me is not a fun challenge. It's honestly just more of an annoyance. There's nothing more annoying than be running at full speed away from zombies, even with stamina up, and still getting caught up by zombies because they're just that damn fast. Especially if you have to reload or something, like it just makes it so frustrating. It also makes weapons like LMGs kind of useless because you're already pretty slow with an LMG. Imagine trying to reload with an LMG while a bunch of zombies are running at you. What are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. You have to pull out your secondary and use that, which is why most people use the same couple weapons in this game. I mean, everybody uses those WSP swarms because they're really damn good and they're also really agile. You want fast weapons. You don't really want to waste your time with these big fat weapons that just slow you down. So, like I said before, it's better than the game being too easy. So, that's fine and all, but I just don't really think that's the best way to make your game harder. I think there's other ways to make your game harder, and I do wish they went with other avenues. And to also talk about weapon damage, right? Of course, tier 3 in Dark Ether, you kind of need epic tier weapons in tier 2 or 3 pack-a-punch. If you don't have those, you're just not going to be killing zombies, and that makes sense. Obviously the zombies should be taking more damage in those harder areas. That's perfectly fine. But ultimately, a lot of the mode relies on RNG in terms of like what you're able to get and how fast you're able to get certain items, unless you spawn in with the best of the best, but that's only if you have the schematics or the available items in your stash. If you don't have the items, then you're kind of shit out of luck and you're going to have to hope for the best. Maybe work your way up through tier 2 and get good stuff for tier 3, but I mean, if you just don't get it, then what are you gonna do? You basically a wasted game because you don't get it in time. Or you can just work your way up on your own in terms of getting points, but of course that's only for pack-a-punch because when it comes to rarities, there's no direct way of increasing your rarity other than just, I guess, purchasing wall weapons that are higher rarity. But if you want to just keep hitting the box, I've hit the box like almost 50 times in a row once and didn't get a single epic tier weapon. So stuff like that's just insane, and obviously it's just RNG. You could definitely hit it once and also get an epic tier weapon. It really just depends on your luck, but I just don't think the success of your game should depend so highly on RNG. And I think a lot of that has to do with the damage the zombies take, because most other zombies modes, if you're doing like Easter eggs or something, you're gonna be fighting the zombies in the 20s, maybe the most the 30s or something like that. And ultimately, most weapons in the game, you know, there's one pack-a-punch tier really, so you'll definitely be able to get your guns pack-a-punched in time for those rounds. But if you want to spend a decent amount of time in tier 3, you're probably not gonna be able to do that unless you just go in there with weaker weapons. And I've done that many times where I have just said fuck it and just go into tier 3 with weaker weapons, and I can survive just fine, sure, but yeah, there's a decent challenge there, because when you do get those super spinners, you can't really kill them in time because your gun just doesn't kill fast enough before they get to you. So like I said, I do prefer the challenge over no challenge at all. I just don't think this is the best way to make a game more challenging, and ultimately the fact that it is open world, there's really no other ways that they felt like they could make it more challenging, so that's just kind of what they did. And I do think it takes away from the challenge that Zombies has had in prior years. And I do really love, I think of a map like Origins, for example. I love how Origins layout is, where, you know, the zombies themselves, they're not sprinting at you. They're not the hardest zombies ever. There's not a million boss zombies thrown into the map other than obviously the Panzer, but the Panzer doesn't come out that frequently. So what is the challenge of Origins? Well, the challenge is the layout. The layout is very tight, and the areas that are open has mud, so you're going to be a bit slower, and the zombies will be able to catch up to you unless you're running full speed in the other direction. And yes, they will not catch up to you if you do run full speed in the other direction, so you are rewarded for getting the hell out of there. But if you want to stay and fight, you are putting yourself at risk, and zombies can come from behind, they can corner you very easily, and that's what makes Origins a very challenging map on those early rounds. Once you get the stabs, obviously it's a bit easier, but I think that challenge just works so well, and it's not a frustrating challenge, it's a fun and inviting challenge, and very engaging, at least in my opinion. And I think you can really tell what I mean when you think of the contrast between tier 1 and 2, and of course tier 3. It's just like the contrast is so massive, and obviously it's supposed to be, but tier 1 and 2 are probably some of the easiest zombies experiences I've ever had. Doing contracts in tier 1 and 2, it feels like easier than Cold War even. It's open space and it has similar mechanics. It's so damn simple. And then you go to tier 3, it's a lot harder of a zombies experience. And like I said, obviously that should be the case, but it just goes to show that when you have this open world feel, you're gonna have it be very easy unless you force in these super spinners and these different mechanics that just make it a bit harder ultimately. And also time limits. I do think time limits were thrown in there for other reasons as well, but I think one of the big reasons is also to make the game harder, because if you had unlimited time in the zombies mode, it would definitely be a lot easier. If you can just take your time leveling up your guns first, you know, getting your gun to pack a punch all the way so then you can go to tier 3, you'd be fine. But the reason why a lot of people end up dying is because they rush into things, just like I was saying before, because we want to spend as much time as possible in the tier 3 area, and we want to do the contracts, we want to do all these things, so we kind of rush into it, and that's usually what leads to people dying. So I do think the time limit is kind of like an artificial difficulty almost. They did the same thing for the Legion boss fight. I don't think the Legion boss fight is that difficult. I really think it's quite an easy boss, but the time limit is what makes it a lot harder, and it's what makes people do a lot of, you know, stupid decisions, because ultimately, you know, the time limit is there and you're kind of worried about the time limit. But the Easter egg itself, the boss fight itself, is really not that hard. And the last reason, and ultimately the most important reason as to why I'm not really a huge fan of open world zombies, is simply because it's taking away development time from round-based zombies. And when I say it's taking away development time, I mean it's taking away a lot of development time. Of course, we've only had Outbreak and MWZ over the past couple years, but I really do believe that if we didn't have these two modes and instead they replaced it with more round-based content, we would probably have like 5 or 6 more round-based maps. And compared to the only, you know, 6 round-based maps we had in the last 4 years, that would be a lot more. That would be almost double of what we currently have from the past 4 years, of course. So I do think there is a place for modes like this, I really do. But the second I start feeling like it's significantly taking away from round-based content, that's when it starts to kind of irk me, and I'm just starting to not really want it anymore. And to the point where I hope we don't even have open world zombies in the next year's Call of Duty. We probably will, but I honestly just don't want to see it. I really don't, because I want to see them focus more on what made zombies popular in the first place. It's the same thing in multiplayer. Multiplayer's been having this struggle for years, where they started introducing other modes like Gunfight, Ground War, and Warzone, which I guess Warzone's kind of separate, but it's the same idea. And players started to feel like we weren't getting enough content for 6v6, and instead we were getting more content for those other modes. And I've always said all these years, they should focus more on 6v6. That's the most important part. It's what made COD popular in the first place. And I'm fine with those modes existing, Just don't let the modes take away development from the main mode. That is the most important thing. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I would love to hear your thoughts. I will see you all in my next one. Peace out.